Alice married into a family from the hills south of Kanazawa. 5 years, she said. It's about 40 minutes from the city by car, long enough to know the road. Not long enough to know the house. Her mother-in-law died in the spring. By summer, the family had decided to sell, and because she was the one between jobs, she was the one who drove out to box the place up. A week, they thought. She took the old Corolla and enough clothes for 10 days, and she arrived after dark, the way you do when you keep finding reasons to leave later. The house sat by itself where the rice fields give way to cedar. The gas was still connected because no one had thought to cancel it. The electricity too. She went through turning on lights, and the house came up around her the way houses do, one room at a time, each switch a small decision about how far in she was willing to be. She started that first night with the kitchen. Cups, mostly. The old woman had kept more teacups than one person needs, and she wrapped each one in newspaper and set it in the box, and each one made the same small sound when she lifted it off the tray. A light ceramic knock, wood underneath it. She noticed the sound because it was the only sound. No traffic out there, no neighbors close enough to hear, just the cups, one after another, and the tape gun, and under the floor, the pipes ticking as the water heater cooled. She slept in the front room, on a futon she found aired and folded in the cupboard, as if someone had been expecting a guest. The second evening, around 8, she was upstairs going through the closets when she heard the bath heater catch, a click, and then the low sound of flame taking hold inside the wall. She stood there with an armful of winter coats and listened to it run. She hadn't touched it. She'd showered cold the night before because she couldn't find the control panel, and now the panel was lit, a small green number glowing in the hallway, and the water was heating for a bath, at exactly the hour a bath would be wanted. A timer, she decided. Old people set timers. The house was full of the old woman's arrangements. The calendar, still on April. The umbrella by the door, with its handle turned outward, ready for a hand. It made sense that some of those arrangements were electric. When she came down to make dinner, the kitchen shutter was lowered, the metal one over the window above the sink. She stood and looked at it for a while. She could not remember lowering it, but she could not exactly remember not lowering it either. She had been up and down the stairs all day with her hands full, thinking about other things. That is the trouble with a week alone in a house. There is no one to confirm what you did. The bath, when she got in it, was the right temperature. She stayed in a long time, listening to the fan hum in the wall, and thought about nothing much at all. By the third day, she had a rhythm. Pack through the afternoon, stop at dusk, and then the evening had a shape to it. Heater, shutter, dinner, bath. She stopped checking the panel. If the house wanted to warm the water at 8, that was one less thing to do. She told me the evenings were the part she liked. The work itself was sad. You cannot wrap a dead woman's hairbrush in newspaper without feeling something. But the evenings were kind. The kitchen was warm. The rice cooker sang its little song. She moved around the room easily, not hunting for anything. Third night in a house she barely knew, and her hand went to the drawer with the matches on the first try. She put it down to the 1 week her mother-in-law had taught her to cook 5 years ago, over New Year's. Some houses you learn fast, she told herself. She warmed the pot and set the tray for tea, and carried it to the low table in the back room, and knelt and settled her weight. And it was only then, with everything already placed, that she looked at the tray properly. 2 cups. She had set out 2 cups. Hers, the white one with the chipped rim she had been using all week because it wasn't worth packing. And a second one, dark, with a roasted brown glaze. A cup she clearly remembered wrapping in newspaper 2 nights before. It was not just out of its box, it was filled. The tea in it was hojicha, the roasted kind, which not drink, and it sat at the far end of the table, facing the garden window, at the place she never sat. She knelt there and went back through the last 10 minutes, and the 10 minutes were simply there, whole and ordinary, warming the pot, reaching up for the cups, pouring, carrying the tray in 2 hands. There was no gap in it anywhere. Her own hands had done all of it, the way your hands do a thing they have done 1,000 times, below the level where you watch yourself. She had never once seen her mother-in-law's evenings. That was the part she kept returning to. 5 years married, and she could count the visits on 2 hands. Always daytime, always with her husband, always the formal room, and the good cushions. She did not know how the old woman spent her nights. She had never seen her lower that shutter, never seen her set that panel, never seen where she took her tea. She poured the second cup down the sink and washed it and set it on the rack, and she left the kitchen light on when she went to bed. She knew that was childish. She did it anyway. The house stayed quiet, not the wrong kind of quiet, the kind a house has when everything in it has been put back where it goes. The 4th evening, she watched herself. That was the word she used. She made herself slow down and watch her own hands, the way you would watch a stranger in your kitchen, and her hands knew things. They lowered the shutter before starting the rice, not after. There is no reason for that order. They would not do it the other way. They turned the cushion at the low table so the seam faced away from the window seat. They carried the teapot out first, alone, and then waited. Actually waited. A few seconds, her standing in the middle of the room, with no reason to be standing there. Then went back for the cups. None of it was hers. She lives in a city apartment with a kettle that switches itself off. She drinks her tea standing at the counter, out of whatever cup is clean. Nothing in her life has an order like this. And here her body was, keeping one, an evening built out of habits she had never seen performed, in a house she barely knew, keeping it well, and nothing about it felt like being made to. She was very clear on that. It felt like remembering. She called her husband that night and kept her voice light and asked what his mother's evenings had been like back when he lived at home. He went quiet for a second and quote, "Then he said what everyone says about their mother. Bath at 8, tea after, the same order every night of his childhood, so fixed you could set a clock by the sound of the shutter coming down." Then he said, she always poured 2. His father had died more than 20 years ago, and for more than 20 years, he said, his mother had set out 2 cups every evening, poured both, drunk one, washed both. He had seen it on every visit and stopped seeing it. Nobody in the family ever mentioned it. It was not a thing you mentioned. It was just the shape her evenings had, a shape for 2. She sat with the phone in her hand after that, in the front room, under the one lamp, and worked it through the way you work at a knot. She had been assuming the house was running its owner's routine, a machine still turning after the operator steps away. But the routine had never been for one person. It had a shape with 2 places in it, and it had held that shape for 20 years with one place empty. Now the woman it belonged to was gone as well, and the shape was still here, still keeping its hour, both places empty. Except they had not been empty. For 4 evenings, one of the places had been filled, and the second cup, the cup her hands kept setting at the seat facing the garden, the seat she never took. She understood it, kneeling there that night. The window seat, the good seat, the one that looks out, that had been the old woman's own place. Whoever she had been pouring for all week, it was not the guest's place she was setting. It was the hostess's. She finished the week. She wants that understood. She did not run, because there was nothing to run from. Nothing in that house ever moved, or breathed, or stood in a doorway. said. They stayed kind. On the last night, she did the whole order herself, deliberately, shutter first. She warmed the pot and set out both cups, hers and the roasted brown one, and poured both, and sat where she always sat, and let the other one go cold across the table. It did not feel like defiance. It felt like manners, like saying it plainly to the room. I know this is not mine. Somebody kept this for you. She washed both cups and turned them upside down on the rack. And before first light, when she carried the last boxes out to the car, she kept her eyes off the rack on the way through. She locked the door, posted the key through the agent's slot in the city, and drove home in the dark, with the radio on the whole way. The boxes reached her apartment that weekend. Her tape, her handwriting on every label. In the box marked kitchen, the tea tin was exactly where she had packed it on the first day. It was empty. She stood in her hallway holding it, this light little tin, and she has no memory, none at all, of it ever being empty. She told me all of this at her own kitchen table, in a building where nothing is older than 5 years. She made tea while she talked, and I watched her set my cup down in front of me, so softly it made no sound at all. The way you put a cup down when someone in the next room is sleeping.